Hello everyone and welcome back to the Great Book of Grudges. My name is Nathan and Total War Warhammer is a great game. It's got so much to it and it keeps getting bigger and bigger with every major patch and DLC cycle. That being said, there's a few things that are a little bit frustrating when it comes to immersion, which is something that is quite important, especially in a fantasy setting. Thankfully, there's a lot of mods out there which actually do help out with this, and in this video I want to talk about the mods that I use to make my game much more immersive. These could be basic lore mods, and even sometimes stuff that changes up your campaign, but does really add to that flavor to keep you going for that next turn, and next turn, and next turn. As a quick note, all of these mods have been tested together, so if you're having any issues, keep in mind that you might have some other conflicting mods. The first mod we're going to be talking about is the Legendary Lore mod. So this one introduces a bunch of context to the Warhammer fantasy world. This means that you can learn the lore of characters, units, and even some important events, building up landmarks and so on. It'll provide you with a pop-up when that happens, so you can read over the lore if you so wish. Stuff like this is actually quite important because a lot of people come into Total War Warhammer not knowing the Warhammer fantasy setting, and they want to know more. But like I said in a previous video, getting your hands on the older rulebooks does become quite difficult nowadays because a lot of those have been long out of print, and the newest Warhammer fantasy setting, Warhammer the Old World, is set 200 years in the past. While a lot of the lore will remain the same, this is mostly for units and so on, but a lot of characters wouldn't have been born at this point, so it's hard to keep up. Sure, you've got the Wikipedia and so on, but in some cases you want to learn as you're playing, you want to learn as you're going through your turn motions, and this is a great mod for that. This comes from the same mod creator as the Victory Conditions Overhaul, so I would highly suggest checking out all the different mods that this creator has put up. This next mod we spoke about very recently, as it's only recently been published. OVN Lost Worlds. This mod updates a bunch of campaign map cities so they look more impressive, especially for very well-known name settlements, fortresses, and so on. They actually look like their lore counterparts if those maps did exist, and if not, they were created by the modding team for specific ones just to give it a different bit of flavor. This is actually quite important because you're looking around this campaign map a lot of time. In some cases, you're sometimes spending more time in the campaign map than you are playing battles, so it's really important to have different visual aspects, because without a different visual flair, you start to really see the sameness. It becomes very boring on the eyes, and it does actually take away from your want to play a campaign. It's amazing how just changing the skins on some settlements really gives you much more enjoyment out of the campaign map because it's more visually pleasing on the eyes. There's a lot of issues with Total War Vanilla where a lot of stuff is reused and it becomes so noticeable that it does get a bit jarring. The mod itself also adds in a bunch of context and lore to settlements and specific locations, especially if you've got landmarks or certain types of resources. It pairs very nicely with the Legendary Lore mod, which means that you'll be learning quite a lot about this wonderful universe which has been going on for 40 years, got unjustly killed off by its creators, but then it got brought back because money. Yeah, you can't see me doing finger guns right now, but you can imagine it. The next mod is Dynamic Worlds, and what this does is change the world slightly as you start conquering. This means that it looks more like your faction is actually dominating. So here I've taken over Elizabeth Settlement, and as soon as I've taken over, some corruption already starts seeping in. And this will be the case with a lot of different factions coming in, where you can start seeing buildings appear as you start taking locations. Sometimes it requires a turn or two to go through, and the idea here is you can start seeing buildings pop up as you start expanding. For example, if you're playing as a human faction and you start taking over in the Southlands, you'll start to see human buildings prop up too, which is really important for that visual aspect of you starting to make your mark in these areas and expanding upon. From what I've been able to see, it pairs very nicely with OVN Lost Worlds. I've not seen too many issues, to be honest, and it just adds more visual flavor. Obviously, OVN Lost World starts adding in some more scenes to the world, like for example elephants and so on, so you're just going to get a fully fleshed out world with both of these two together. This next one is going to be two mods because they both really synergize together and it's so important to have these. This is Siege Maps for Campaign and also GCCM, both of them published by FSF Ranger. Well, GCCM was an older mod from Warhammer 2, but those modders have not come back, so the creator behind custom siege maps for campaign compilation has decided to bring those mods over, which is really, really cool, because basically what this does is it gives you much more siege maps. Now you might be saying, well, how is this going to be immersion if it's campaign and battle focused, right? The thing is, and it's very obvious when it comes to Bretonnia, a lot of the factions, a lot of the races have the same 2, 3, sometimes 4, but very rarely battle maps for minor or major siege battles, and it becomes an absolute slog when you start dealing with factions, like say for example Bretonnia. If you start deciding I'm going to go and attack Bretonnia, you're going to be dealing with literally the same maps over and over and over and over again, and it just kills off your want to play a campaign. It's also really important to note that, like how all these settlements are supposed to look different in the campaign map, it's very important for them to look very different in the battles too, because it makes you much more immersed when you see this huge sprawling city that you might have seen in artwork in maybe Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay or one of the rule books, maybe one of the army books. These are mods that I can't take out of my load order for that specific reason, because it adds to that little oomph that you've needed just to keep going in here. I'm just showing off one of the Bretonnian cities, and just look at it. Look how visually impressive it is. It is absolutely massive. It works in multi-level. You've even got buildings to fight into, like one of those jousting ranges. You can go into the fort itself. Stuff like this really adds that you're fighting a proper siege. And I believe it's a big reason why a lot of people don't like fighting siege battles. Because yes, sieges aren't in the best place. They did get a little bit better with a patch a while back, obviously making the tower defense game go away a little bit. But the same maps over and over again just really takes the wind out. I have had campaigns where I've been fighting in Bretonnia, and I just, after a few hours, go, yeah, I don't want to play Bretonnians again, or I don't want to deal with fighting through Bretonnia, so I'll just auto-resolve and auto-resolve. Same thing with the Tomb Kings, where a lot of the maps, also you might have noticed, are just reskinned. There's a bunch of Tomb King maps which are actually maps that are used by the Cathayans originally and stuff like that, where the Warhammer 3 maps are just kind of just asset flipped for a lot of Warhammer 1 and 2 races. It kills off the want to play. And now this last mod is a campaign mod, but it is super important. Immortal Empires Expanded. Again, you might be thinking, well, it's more of a campaign mod, it's not really for immersion, and I would argue that yes, it's for immersion too. You've got areas of the map right now in vanilla which aren't open. It's really weird to see those areas just closed off. Yes, we had that in Warhammer 1 with Athalloran, but when it came to the promotion of Immortal Empires, it was always the Warhammer Fantasy World, realized, blah blah blah. So not being able to go into Ind or Koresh is strange. Then there's other places on the map which are just flat out missing. Nippon, the Lost Isles of Elephas, Warhammer Korea, which never really had a proper name, and the Northern Chaos Waste just feel absolutely tiny compared to what they're supposed to be. This mod also adds in a bunch of different locations, so you get islands next to Lustria to add into a little bit more flavor, so you can do a little bit more island hopping. It also will help Noctilus get a little bit better expansion in that campaign. There's a few settlements being added into different locations. It makes everything look and feel like the Warhammer Fantasy world, and stuff like that is super, super important. We might never get a Nippon race or a Kurgan race in Koresh and so on, but we will through modders, and well, you need the locations open. It's really strange to me playing Grand Cafe and not being able to go down and expand my influence southward, or playing as Village the Curseling and being shoehorned to push straight into Cafe rather than expanding myself and subjugating more tribes, being able to use the Chaos Waste to teleport to the other side and fight Valkyria if I want to, or with the Chaos Dwarfs again fighting within the Chaos faction. There's a lot of incentive for the Chaos factions to start destroying themselves rather than working together in some cases, which the Chaos Dwarves generally keep to themselves. They would go and fight other factions, but they normally trade with the Chaos Warriors, so being pushed into fighting them just seems odd to me. Immortal Empires Vanilla is fine. It's a great map for what it is, but when you start missing out on other lore locations which are just there, they've been mapped out, sure, not the settlements, but the landmass is there, not being able to go into that just throws me off. It makes me feel like there is an invisible wall, and the invisible wall situation in a lot of video games is not fun. This is why Immortal Empires Expanded always stays in my load order, because I just can't see myself playing without it. It sucks when I have to do early access stuff and the mod doesn't work, I'll be honest with you. But these are mods that I feel are essential for a more immersive experience in Total War Warhammer 3. There's obviously a lot more, and feel free to suggest more in the comments below. I'll have the mods that I've been talking about in the description. If I see some good suggestions, I'll put them in the description too. Keep in mind that I might be a bit late with that, because as the time that this video is going out, I am going to be playing some Old World, actually. I'm going to be playing Demons of Tzeentch. I think my friend is bringing Bretonnians. Should be interesting. But yeah, have a great day, guys, and I'll see you all again very, very soon.